Hello, we'll get going with the webinar. Hello, my name is John French. I'll be the moderator today. I would like to welcome you to the third webinar for the LCI, the Lean Construction Ireland Community of Practice on Constructive Wastewalks. It's jointly run by the CCF, Construction Client Forum, and the CAF, Construction Academic Forum for Ireland. I'll pass you over in a moment to the LCI core group representative who will introduce the topic, and the speaker will be Kevin White. For some logistics, if you have any questions, type it on the webinar. We will consolidate the questions and ask Simon in the second half of the webinar. Any questions we do not get answered, we will follow up afterwards in the webinar, and it will all be posted on the Lean Construction Ireland website also. There will be a survey at the end. Please fill it out. It is important to ensure we are continuously learning. Agenda today will be as follows: the opening, which I'm doing now and almost finished. The introduction will be by Kevin White, which will be about 5 minutes, and then a presentation by Simon Watson of Jones Engineering, which will be about 30 minutes. We're going to finish at 5 to the hour to allow everybody to be ready for their next meeting. And there'll be 20 minutes Q&A, and if people could do the survey at the end, would be great. I'll pass you over to Kevin White now, the core group LCI COP member and also a CAF member.
Thanks, John. Hello, my name is Kevin White. I'm an LCI core group member and also a core group member of the CAF, which is the Construction Academia Forum. Just a little reminder just before I introduce Simon. Please give us your feedback at the end of the webinar. It'll only take you 1 or 2 minutes. And for today's webinar is on construction waste walks, which I'm really looking forward to hearing about. The speaker today is my colleague from Jones Engineering Group, Mr. Simon Watson. Simon is over 30 years in the industry and is head of team development in Jones Engineering as it stands at the minute. He's a time-served craftsman with a HNC in building services, also a previous gold medal winner in the Youth Skills Olympics for plumbing. Simon has operated in the supervisory and construction manager roles throughout his career, and currently has responsibility for monitoring all apprentice movements within the company, including additional in-house skill training. He compiles quarterly assessments for trade labour within the company, and is personally responsible for develop and roll out our comprehensive lean training over 160 number of our senior engineering staff and management, and is part of the team that compiles and issues the company's monthly publication, the Lean Times. So a big driver in lean within our group. Without further ado, I'd like to pass you over to Simon for his presentation.
Well, thanks very much, Kevin and John, for that nice introduction. And thanks to everybody for tuning in this afternoon. Okay, we'll get stuck in. So our presentation today, as you've been told, is Constructive Wastewalks. So this is how things have progressed in Jones Engineering and how we've moved along with Wastewalks, and we're going to share that experience with you this afternoon. So I hope you all get something out of this. So we typically started with Lean in the group about 10 years ago. At the time, we experimented with it on various sites. It was a bit sporadic. It stuck in some places, it didn't in others, and typically it fizzled out over time. As you can see there were isolated locations. You know, there were general issues with it. It wasn't our best start ever. So our current implementation started about 2 years ago. Okay, this was much more robust. It was implemented across the whole group at the same time, so all the different companies there. We have a lean steering group now, which meets every 2 weeks, and we have a representative from each of the companies in that group. We're learning from, so it's not just one company trying to implement this, it's all the companies together. We've also developed an in-house magazine, if you like, called the Lean Times. And that's how we roll out any of the good ideas and innovations that we have between the sites and between the companies. And that's published once a month and goes out to everybody on our mailing list, so they all get their updates that way. So as we said, our journey started about 10 years ago. About 2 years ago then, the directors made the decision to rekindle this, if you like. So we set about making a plan about how we were going to do it and what we were going to implement. And we decided that the best thing to do was to engage an external expert on this. So we got a lean expert from industry, and we decided to put a plan together, and we started with a pilot on one site first. It worked out very successful for us, and it's now been extended across all the group as we've described. So that's our current reality. So things are moving from strength to strength here, but just a few key points that we wanted to bring up. Learning about lean. Like it's all very well picking up some of the tools of lean and putting them into practice, but learning about lean is a real key here. You need to have people that have been and had more and been educated about it. It's vital to put that into practice rather than just using the tools. Developing lean capability. So we're continually enrolling and educating more and more people within the company. So we're spreading the word all the time, if you like, and getting more people up to speed. And then starting with Wastewalks. So the Wastewalks give good visibility of the improvements and the fixes. So it's a great place to start. And as I say, that's what our discussion's about today. So, okay, so learning about lean. So as we said, the education, we've got 4 guys who are black belts, and we have an additional 2 who are enrolled this year. These have been trained down the University of Limerick, done the course down there. We've got 8 green belts within the group. So those are to a lower level, but they've got experience in last planner training and that type of thing. And then we've got 160 trained to yellow belt level. So this was our industry expert carried out this training for us in various different groups. We've had about 14 or 15 groups now done to that level. And although we're saying it's introductory level, there's actually about 20 hours of contact time within that training. So it's a fairly comprehensive session. And then the newbies, all our new starts get training as well. So that's an in-house session that we do. It takes about an hour and a half, and gives them an overview on lean, just gives them the basics, brings them up to speed. So what do we all want from Wastewalks? So I mean, we're all in business, and we all want to save time, and we all want to save money. That's the bottom line. But the real bottom line here, as it says, is it's all about adding value to the customer. The customer, we need to make sure that the customer is comfortable with what we're doing, and we're giving him the benefit of what we're getting out of it, so that there's a mutual respect here and everybody wins that way. So the fundamentals then, there's 2 fundamentals really, bringing value to the customer and removing waste from the value stream. So, and obviously, unless the waste is removed, you can't bring value to the customer. But very important that we're building relationships here with the customer, and that's how you're going to make things more efficient and more streamlined. You're adding value to his process, his day-to-day activities. We're also enhancing the reputations of both parties as well there. You know, you can make yourself more efficient and you make yourself more valuable in the industry. Okay, so how are we going to do this? So typically with a waste walk, you've got to stop and get out there and look at the task that's being performed. You can't do a waste walk on a construction activity sitting at a desk. Okay, you've got to go out in the field where the task is being performed and look at it there. Okay. The flip side to that is that if your workplace is at a computer or at your desk, then obviously that's where you're going to do your waste work. You're going to be looking at your systems, looking at the way things go together and your procedures, and you're going to be, you know, trying to identify any weaknesses there or anywhere you can make improvements. But the graphic is good here. When you can't see the forest for the trees, go for a walk in the forest. So it's typically about saying you need to go to where the work is taking place, where the activity happens. That's where you're going to be able to observe the waste. We also, what you need to do is to sort of reboot when you go out for a waste walk. You need to refresh your memory before you go out and focus on that activity for that period of time. So it's not a stroll around the site and pick up a bit of progress and a couple of safety issues and an odd lean thing here and there. You go out for a period of time and you focus on waste walk. You focus on your lean activities. And that's the key to this, is to prioritize it for that period. So most people, I'm sure, will have seen this. This is TIMWOODS, the acronym TIMWOODS, which describes initially the 7 types of waste. And more recently then there was an 8th waste added, which was the skills. So this graphic is what we would use on the back of our form that we use for doing the waste walks, which I'll show you in the next slide now. But it's handy to jog your memory when you're walking around, just to prompt you on the types of waste that you should be looking for. So briefly, just TIMWOODS, the T is transportation. So obviously if you've got any long delivery routes or materials having to be moved a long way on site, you're wasting time transporting material. Inventory, if you've got excess stock in the stores, you're hiding issues, you're tying money up in stock that doesn't need to be there at that time. That's a waste. Motion, M for motion. Any motion, if a guy is standing at a bench and he's picking parts up off the floor or from a rack 20 feet away from him on an ongoing basis, it's not, his work area is probably not organized as best it could, so you need to reorganize that. W, waiting. So obviously any kind of waiting is a delay. You know, you could be waiting for a meeting, you could be waiting for an RFI to be processed through a system. All the things are delays that we want to try and streamline and remove. Overproduction. So we have a good slide on overproduction coming up in a minute, which explains that quite well. But basically, producing a whole load of items before they're required is overproduction. It's to try and produce things just as they're required, and then you don't have storage issues, you don't have any of that kind of stuff going on. Overprocessing. So again, overprocessing is doing additional work than over and above what's required. If you have to do a weld and the requirement is just to clean the weld, you don't need to go and polish it. You know, the polishing element is overprocessing. It's over and above what's required, so it's waste. D for defects. Obviously, any kind of repair or scrap or rework is a waste activity, so we don't want to see those. And then S for skills, which would be not using the skills of your employees to the best. So if you've got a welder, say, you don't want the welder sweeping the floor. You know, you want him welding. That's where he's going to be most productive and making things more efficient for you. So that's the wastes. So just moving on then to the template that we would use. And again, simple is this. We keep things as simple as we can. You just want a list with the observation itself in the field, the type of waste, whether it's motion, weighting, whatever it is, who observed it, the suggestion to eliminate it, which if you can't figure that out in the field, it may need to go back and be worked on by a different group to come up with a suggestion. And the owner. So if the owner is not the observer in the field, then somebody else needs to be assigned. And then a due date and comments. Okay, so nice and simple. Then what we've found as well is that on any large projects, we've introduced a rota for the waste walks. So the rota details who's going to go. Typically we work in pairs, and we would assign either a certain activity for each pair or a certain work area. And we try and rotate the pairs as well, break the people up and move them into areas that they're not used to working in. Because we find that a fresh pair of eyes in an area is going to find things that the guy who's working there every day is just going to overlook. When you do go down into the area, make sure you're informing the crew of what you're doing. The worst thing you could do is stand there with a form in your hand, looking over somebody's shoulder and writing things down without talking to them, because straight away they're going to feel intimidated and they don't know what's going on. So you need to engage the crew. You need to speak to them, explain what you're doing. That's a waste walk. You're observing the process of what's happening, not the individuals. You're trying to streamline activities by, identifying any waste and removing it, and get them involved. Okay, that's a critical thing, is to get them involved. So the Wastewalks are a structured approach to look at activities. They're focus time, as I said before. You need to be specific. The details are the critical thing here. We don't want to see people coming back with a full form every walk. It's just down to getting the quality items here, critical ones, and working on those. And they're the things that are going to give you the wins. And again, be considerate of those in their work environment. You know, do the Wastewalk in small groups. Okay. So the basic concept is to have structure, process, and repeatability here. Okay, so typically then, if you've got a lot of Wastewalks coming in, we operated a review procedure. So we'd have a weekly meeting that takes place and reviews all the Wastewalks that have happened. And if any of the issues weren't able to be resolved in the field, then the group that did the review would come up with suggestions or would drag in the right people to get the best result. Okay, so these were kept on a log, and typically the log is there. You know, Lean is great when you have data to analyze. So if you have data recorded here on the log, you've got something to look at to see if there's any patterns or anything occurring that you can rectify. So that's a typical Wastewalk sheet now. This is what it looks like. Again, examples here. No fittings in the bending area to put on the 1/4 inch line. The apprentice left to find one, was then followed by the fitter. Both were gone for 6 minutes before returning with the correct fitting. So this was waiting, was the waste of waiting. The solution was to keep a stock of fittings in the bending area. And when questioned, the fitter said that the supply was normally stocked, but he was surprised that there wasn't any on this occasion. So the next one then was to no tube stored in the bending area. So the time was wasted transferring pipe from the storage area each time they needed to get new pipe. So it was a transport issue here. You can imagine the guys leaving to get a length of tube every 10 minutes to bend it up. So they rearranged the area to allow the tube to be stored in the area. So now all that walking time was gone. And then when the first spool was being bent, it was placed on purge. Time was spent waiting by the fitter on the apprentice to set up the facing tool. So again, this is waiting. The apprentice had plenty of time to set up the facing tool while he was standing there watching the fitter, bending the tube and putting it on purge. So again, the two activities should have been happening in parallel rather than in series. So that's something that we find happens quite a bit. Second example there, workers having to travel long distances with toolboxes. So this is a typical thing on any site. So use of trolleys and job boxes, you know, for storage in local areas to try and minimize people moving things around. That's the key. On-site communications, looking for tools, material, and fellow workers. So again, motion there. On-site use of radios was obviously a big thing there to help the communication between the crews. Delegation of workload, so giving the workers more responsibility and training. Workers having to travel long distances to get rid of rubbish. So again, transport, motion. So we have an apprentice there using a site trolley or a wheelie bin to transport rubbish from the demolition area to other site projects to skip to get rid of it. So simple things. You know, our last one then, the last example that we show here is, you know, MEWP downtime due to not being refueled or batteries not being charged. So waiting again here. So what the guys did was they hired a diesel bowser and gave responsibility to the storeman to check the fuel levels daily and fuel up. And then also anybody who was using a battery powered machine and signed on the checklist in the morning had the responsibility to make sure that that machine was plugged in on charge in the evening. So like I say, simple fixes, but simple fixes on lots of sites saves a lot of time. So this was the example of overproduction I was talking about earlier. So one particular project, we had a lot of stainless steel pipe spools that were fabricated and brought to site. And this was the picture that we were greeted with when we visited site. So you can see it's not too pleasant really from a storage point of view. So we introduced a few things and we made the guys sort of stand back and think about what was happening, and this was the end result. So you can see a much tidier area for a start, but it's hard to see here, but on the end of each rack you can see there's actually a list now on each rack individually which lists the number of spools on that rack and the spool numbers. So now the guys just have to walk in, scan the individual lists, they know which rack their spool is on, and they just have to look through one rack to pick it out, whereas before they were looking through the whole area trying to find one spool. So there was a huge amount of waste of time there. So again, any kind of storage of materials on site has to have a system in place to make it productive. So this is great. What it feels like after your first waste walk. So pictures speak louder than words here. So I think this is a great way to express how you should feel after your first waste walk. So I think he's great. I want this guy on my crew. Okay, a couple more examples here of issues from waste walks. So this was the first waste walk here identified a whole lot of valves and instruments being installed stick-built at high level on a pipe rack. So the issues obviously were access to install. You know, all the valves were positioned at high level. There was congestion in the piping zone because things were up in the rack, and you know, it wasn't a good design. So the crew actually suggested to build facilities racks and install them at low level. So some of the positives there, obviously the racks can be prefabbed off-site now. You're minimizing the install time. There's less congestion in the pipe rack and on-site. There's better accessibility for both maintenance and operation of the equipment. And there's a standardized construction, which means you can make a number of racks in advance if you need multiple racks and have them ready to go. But I suppose the bottom line is this particular activity, we increased our productivity by 20% by doing it this way. This just shows a particular facilities rack, just an animated sequence from the BIM here, just showing the rack being assembled. And it shows how the transition from BIM to reality. At the end of this, you'll see there's a photograph of the finished rack, and you'll see the similarities there. Okay. So second example, this waste walk was done on orbital welding. Again, identified inefficiencies here. We had availability of weld collets wasn't ideal and poor storage of the collets. So each welder did not have a full set of collets, and the guys spent a lot of time walking around to each other trying to find who had the particular size of collets that they needed. There were also common activities that weren't centralized. So every day the welder had to do a weld coupon before he could start welding. So he needs stubs of tube to do that coupon. And the welders were cutting their own stubs of tube initially when we did the waste walk. So what we did was we put a central person in place to cut all the coupons and have those available in a central location. So the guys just came, picked them up at the start of the shift and started work. They didn't have to queue and wait and cut their own coupons. We also introduced the selection box here, the storage for the guys to, you know, we issued every welder with this kit, full set of collets, purge fittings, tube cutter, Allen keys, all the stuff he needed, so that each welder now had a full kit and they didn't need to walk to each other to look for anything. We also found that benches and vices were an issue. The guys were walking to cut coupons and trying to find a bench. So we made up these vices which clamped onto the columns everywhere in the building, so the guys could just move them with them and set them up on the adjacent column. Saved a lot of time. So the positives again, standardized equipment storage. Every weld plant you go to has the material stored in the same way. You're minimizing the walking time. The consumables were stocked daily in agreed locations. The QA resource was redeployed during peak times. So we found that one of the delays was the weld inspector in the field. So we had to take one of our weld inspectors from a desk job first thing in the morning when he was required most in the field and bring him out there. And that helped things too. And the procedure was developed and agreed with the welders. So we got their input. We did things based on that. And again, bottom line here, we actually increased the weld productivity by 100% once we did this. The third one is on a different, it's in an operating system rather than in the field. So it's again useful to look at this one. So this waste walk identified that 75% of purchase order queries had to be visited more than once to resolve. So I'm sure this is a standard problem throughout most companies, but the guys identified that the over-processing of the invoices was tying up their resources. And the operating system had not been reviewed before using the eyes of waste. So before the Wastewalks were implemented, people didn't think to look at this. This was just the way we'd always been doing it, so we carried on doing it that way. So they reorganized the flow of activities and streamlined things, and they introduced a standard where the queries have to be resolved within 7 days. So the positives out of that, obviously the resources were freed up to work on other activities. There was a quicker turnaround of invoices, and there was improved job satisfaction because people were doing less rework and visiting work once only. Again, with a saving of 75 man hours over a 1 month period once this was implemented. Okay, so this shot of the overall improvement on our pilot project. So again, you can see at 1 is where we should be. That's when all things are going well. So you can see where we started from, but we were positively trending up all the time from when we introduced the Wastewalks on the project. Bit of a blip here. This is Christmas time. So obviously productivity is not as good around the Christmas period. There were site walks and cleanups and stand downs. But again, trending up, and all the time the cumulative was trending up. So very, very positive results once the Wastewalks were introduced. And again, here we have our pictures speaking louder than words. So we want people to go ahead and take the first step and do a Wastewalk. Okay, so just a couple of slides left, and then we have a short video. So Wastewalks will transform this rowdy looking bunch of people into this much more organized looking bunch. Okay, so we'll click on the button here and we should get a short video which tells us all about the Wastewalks.
Hey Simon, the sound isn't coming through. If you could talk through this as it goes along, that'd be great.
Sorry folks, I'm being told that the sound isn't coming through here, so I'll just try and do a bit of a voiceover for you. So this is giving examples of how we've embraced things in Jones Engineering. And it's about, again, giving our customers a service and a product that they want. So the two main concepts of Lean are bringing value and removing waste from the value stream. So this is Jim Curley, the general manager of our group. And he's outlining here the principles that we operate under, whereby we use the Wastewalks to improve things. So where everybody has embraced the Lean process, it's where the Wastewalks are certainly helping us more. Again, this is the review, the weekly review that we do on the Wastewalks. So we're trying to give what the client wants first time, and that's one of the big things that we get from this. So again, you're just seeing pictures here of some of the guys carrying out Wastewalks. So these are the 7 wastes, and then the addition of the 8th waste of skills. So here you can see typical type of error that's been seen. So we're looking at the guys here, 3 or 4 guys carrying pipe to the back of a truck, which is definitely inefficient. But 1 pipe trolley wheeling the same spools out there and lifting them up much quicker, much more efficiently. So inventory. So this guy comes and asks for a box of bolts, and typically the box gets left in the site box and everything is kicking around there, wasted. So instead, he asks for what he actually needs, and he gets handed a bag of what he's going to use that day. So here we have the fitter standing watching the welder, and he's just waiting there before he goes off to do the next activity. So again, this is something that could be done in parallel. So over-processing. So here the guys are using older style tools of a saw and a file, where a modern powered cutter and a reamer could be used to increase efficiency. So overproduction, you can see all the goods sitting on the racks there, all the pipe spools made too far in advance. So as this trolley is made, it's being moved out to the truck, and that's the just-in-time element which keeps things efficient. So the defects are quite obvious. If something's done wrong, it gets scrapped. You're wasting material, you're wasting time. So we're trying to promote the right first time culture. So the skills, we have a suggestion box scheme called a better way, and we get input there from the guys in the field. We listen to what they have to say, because they're obviously they're the experts at what they do. So we're taking their input and we're introducing those ideas. So again, the Wastewalk team here have been shown just overseeing some activities and trying to identify where improvements can be made. So waste is defined as anything beyond the absolute minimum of materials, manpower, and machinery to add value to an activity. Again, Jim is telling us here that we have to be prepared to do things more efficiently and better and improve to keep ourselves to the forefront in the industry. Okay, so that's just the end of our short video there, just giving you the Wastewalk lowdown. So I'm sure all the sharp eyes amongst you spotted the issue there, the TIMWOODS on the label on the pipe, and in the video clip then there were errors there. So this was just an example that was set up just to show the guys, to show people what sort of thing that we come across. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. So we're going to open the floor to questions and answers. So I think Kevin or John is going to kick back in here now.
Yeah, Simon. So we've a number of questions coming in there during our presentation. I'll kick off with a few. I suppose the first one that came in was, how do you manage to keep people focused on carrying out Wastewalks when projects are busy?
Okay, yeah, $6 million question. I suppose as projects are ramping up and we're taking people on, we're getting people into a project keen and enthusiastic, and it's not as difficult to keep people focused on them at that stage. Problems we have or we find is that when the project starts to ramp down, people are more focused on where they're going next and what's happening next. We do the suggestion box scheme that we have, the A Better Way scheme, that works quite well. We find, people come up with good suggestions either from a Wastewalk or otherwise. They put the suggestion into the box, and if the suggestion is implemented, they get rewarded for it. So, you know, it's a win-win from both sides because it improves our productivity and helps people keep going that way.
Very good,
Answer
yeah.
the question?
Yeah, no, that's perfect, yeah. So yeah, just a reminder to anybody who's listening in there, you can post more questions. I have plenty here to go with, but if you do post a question there for us and we don't get to answers in the Q&A today, we will follow up with the answers for you afterwards as well with Simon. So just to remind you of that if you want to post any questions in the questions box there. So another question we had in there was, so have you had any standout items that were picked up from a waste walk?
Okay. I wouldn't say, well, I can't think of any one standout item, but we've had a lot of good suggestions come back from the Wastewalks to resolve problems. We've actually ended up fabricating little tools and bits of equipment and plant that have helped us here. You know, we've had quite a few rigging attachments for, you know, for lifting, either lifting pipe spools into position or forklift attachments. Or one good one actually that springs to mind was that the guys were having a problem moving material through a lift, a client's lift, without damaging the surface of the lift. And what they ended up doing was manufacturing this thing, which for all the world looks like a child's slide on a wheeled trolley. And it meant that they were able to get lengths of pipe or lengths of cable ladder or trunking diagonally inside the lift without banging them off the walls or stacking them against the walls. It just wheeled them in on this trolley. And, you know, it was, again, a win-win for everybody. But we've had lots of different ideas there. As I say, I can't think of one standout idea, but lots of good individual ones.
I remember that one in particular myself, actually, and I know it was lean. It was rolled out to our lean times as well, so everybody got to see it from the different areas who hadn't necessarily come across it themselves.
That's right.
Another question in, Simon, is how difficult is it to convince senior management to engage in this process? Like, how would you sell it to them as being worthwhile?
I suppose what I'd say there is you've got to try something. Try something out first, and the initial results typically will tell you. You know, if you can get a couple of small wins on something that's going to give you traction and get people involved straight away. Like Wastewalks are great, especially if you haven't done them before in your company, because there's got to be lots of sort of low-hanging fruit out there. And when you start doing them, you start picking off these things, and people see straight away, you know, we can make progress here. You know, this is going to make a difference to the way we do business. So I would suggest just pilot it. You know, start and pick a particular site or a particular area and just give it a go.
Very good, yeah. Another one coming in there was what's the typical mix of people doing the walks? Is it specific or is it quite general in regards to the different sites? So is there a particular mix, and then within that, then how do you get people to trust that this is the right thing to be doing?
Okay, the mix from our point of view, the mix typically it depends on the size of the job, I suppose. We've tried it a number of different ways. But the one key element that we find works best is if you mix two people from two different work areas, so that at least one of them is looking at a task that he's either unfamiliar with or it's not the task he's doing every day. So you get this fresh pair of eyes syndrome, you know, and he's going to pick up something that somebody else will look at and just overlook it because they've seen it all day every day. So he's seeing that straight away and he's questioning it. And really that's what a waste walk is. It's just questioning all the parts of the activity and seeing if something looks out of place. Getting people on board, like getting the employees on board is the big thing, because, you know, what you want, obviously, you know you're successful if you've got people coming up to you saying, listen, I had a great idea about doing this and I was thinking if we changed it to do it a certain way, it might be better. If you're getting those kind of comments back from the guys in the field, you're on the road to making a big difference there.
Great stuff, Simon. Yeah, another one in as well is how do you transfer the learnings between sites and crews?
Yeah, so again, I mentioned there we have a monthly newsletter that we have called the Lean Times, and typically we get feedback from various different sites on any new innovations or new processes that they've tried or new equipment that they've tried that's been successful to them. And this goes out in the Lean Times once a month. So that's the typical method that we use for getting it across. Now, I'm sure there's other methods and different methods for lots of different companies, but we find that it's quite a good way of doing things, and there's obviously a history there. There's a back catalogue of all the different things that people can go back and research or look into if there's something that they wanted to find some information about. I think that's about that.
Yeah, very good. Another one in from the same person actually. Did you find the walks improve the overall quality output?
Yeah, we combined actually. Another initiative was to introduce a sort of quality handbook, and so that was done in conjunction. Well, it's happened along with the Wastewalks in the same areas, but we issued this handbook, and this handbook basically focused on the snag items, the main snag items that we were finding across all the projects. It's the Pareto rule. We've 20% of the items here are giving us 80% of the snags. So if we can focus on that 20% and eliminate them, then obviously we've just cut a huge amount of snag items off at the end of the project. So we introduced this book, and we handed this book out and went through it with all the guys too. And it's effectively like a little handbook, and they can check through it and see the big hitters, and it's just prompts, and it's anything to keep things fresh in somebody's mind and focus on the issues that they should be avoiding, if you like.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Simon. Just another question in there. Is this something that requires a lot of training, or can you just start?
Again, it's pretty fundamental. A waste walk is what it says. You're looking at the activity. You're looking for anything that looks out of place, and you're talking to the guys that are doing it and getting their input and trying to see, is there a better way of doing it? It may be a different piece of equipment. It may be that they've used this equipment for the last 10 years and this is all they're familiar with and this is all the company buys, but there's a new piece on the market now, and the cost of buying that would far outweigh the efficiencies, the efficiencies would far outweigh the cost of buying it by introducing it. So it's not, the Wastewalks are not a complicated thing. They're basically a common sense approach to looking at something and seeing what's working and what's not working. And you look at the items that are not working and you try and come up with a better way of doing it. That's what it is.
Very good, yeah. Just a funny question in there in regards to, have you ever seen anything go wrong or any negatives come out of Wastewalks? Have you seen any negative patterns come from it?
Haven't seen too many negative patterns. We got more negative patterns from our suggestion box scheme when we introduced that first, because when guys are allowed to drop cards in a box, you get all kinds of comments thrown in there initially. The Wastewalks, I haven't seen negatives. As I say, that from my point of view, the key is it's not a stalking activity. You're not going down there and looking at people from hiding behind columns and trying to see what they're doing. It's not a time and motion study. You're trying to get people involved, let them you explain to them what you're doing first, in that you're viewing the process and not the person, and get their input back. And if you get them involved and you get them rolling into this, that's where the momentum generates. You can suddenly, they start coming back to you with ideas on things that you haven't even seen. So no, negatively, I haven't seen anything on the Wastewalk side of it.
Very good. And another one in there, I'm running short on time now really for questions, but I'm down to the last couple. So there's one here on have you seen a benefit from the office-based Wastewalks in regards to getting senior management buy-in and management within your office environment?
So the office ones, I think, are a little bit more challenging, because most people's systems and that are computerized, and it's hard to sort of do a Wastewalk on your system. But I think you have to just persevere, and you have to look at the way you file your emails, or the way your invoicing system works, or whatever the system is that you operate. You need to just look at it objectively And as I say, having somebody with you who doesn't know that system is going to ask the basic questions. And it's one of those basic questions that might prompt you to say, do you know, I never really saw that before. And if we did it this way, suddenly we'd improve it.
Very good. Just down to the last couple here. So do you use a reward system for your ideas?
Yeah, we have, as I said, a better way system, and the ideas that we implement are rewarded. The idea being that obviously it helps people to keep contributing if they're getting a little something out of it. But as I said, from the company point of view, the company is benefiting big time. So the rewards, everybody wins. Both sides win, I think, from doing it that way. And that's the philosophy that we operate in Jones Engineering anyway, is that both sides are coming out of this positively.
Thanks, Simon. I'm going to call the questions at that if we can. Like there will be another couple coming in there, but what we'll do is we can answer them separately, because I'd just like to have a few minutes to do a bit of a wrap up and let people know what other events are coming up in September for us through the LCI and the CCF and CAF, and we can roll on. So I suppose firstly I'd like to thank Simon for the insightful presentation, and sharing the knowledge is good. From a lean perspective, it's really good. Simon, if you can actually just roll on to the next slide for me as well, as part of the
sure,
just
yeah.
So I could just show everybody what we're going to be talking about as well. So the next event that's coming up is the next webinar, I should say, that's coming up is by Gary Widger. He's head of innovation in Mercury. The lean organization is the webinar. The theme really is leading changes, tips on how to implement lean in your project and organization. And I've seen we've had Gary involved in the LCI. He's a core group member, and he's a proven track record in design and delivery of innovative business transformations. Highly qualified guy, 17 years in the business. So I'm looking forward to that one. It should be very interesting. And I know that he's working globally for Mercury, so he will be able to share a lot of insights from across the globe in regards to lean and energizing people and how to work together. So we're looking forward to that one. If you just go on to the next one there, please, Simon. Next slide. Yeah, so we've got a couple of events, other lean events coming up. In September, make a date for the 28th. This is basically lean construction fundamentals, how value can be delivered through lean construction. We're trying to hit geographically through the LCI, we're trying to hit a number of areas within the country. So in this month's event is going to be held in Sligo. The BAM are the sponsors. So again, for people who haven't been to an LCI event before, they typically run for a couple of hours. You get some breakout sessions. You'll get to go to a couple of workshops. Really interesting information around lean. Obviously, our next webinar is the 27th of September, as I spoke about earlier. We are running also lean coffee mornings or lean mornings through the LCI, and this has been run in Cork, in Little Island in Cork, in the Radisson Blu on the 15th of September. So if you're out and about, you can register for that and come along. And the theme of that one is overcoming the barriers to lean construction. And the speaker is Owen Curran, and he's a lean champion for PM Group. So very interesting, and he's at MSD Bruni. And the sponsor for that lean morning is PM Group. Another event that we're promoting through the LCI as well is the LIPS conference. It's in Denmark, so anyone fancies a spin over to Denmark to get a bit of lean. It's been held between the 13th and 14th of September, and that is the International Conference on Lean in the Public Sector. So a lot of heavy hitters at it, a lot of really good insight, a lot of academic input as well there, which is good for everybody. It's all part of learning and lean and sharing the information. So just if you could just go to the next slide, please, Simon. Just wrapping up here now. So just a few other areas. If you're looking for more information on lean, you can try our LinkedIn. We are on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We obviously have a Lean Construction website as well, which is actually being refreshed at the moment, so you will be seeing that happening in the coming month or so. But again, lots of good information on there if you're looking for more information on Lean. So again, thanks again, Simon, for the webinar. And again, if anybody had posted any other questions that we hadn't answered, we will answer them separately through Simon. So we will be sharing this presentation with everyone, and we also have recorded the session as well, so you can actually access that through the website. Again, thanks again, John, for the original introduction and for hosting the webinar. And just on behalf of the CCF, CAF, and the LCI community of practice, everybody have a good, safe day, rest of your day, and try and keep as lean as possible in the coming months. Okay, and we'll see you next month for the next webinar. Okay, thanks again.